Hello, beloved ones. Thank you for joining me this evening, Sunday, August 19th. Excuse me, I hope you've had a good week. And I hope that this discussion this evening will bring you to a new level of understanding about your journey here on Earth in terms of how we can get to a level of a deeper understanding of how we can change ourselves and take more control over our lives. And please forgive me for adjusting with this camera, you know me and this technology. Okay. All right, so we are going to be talking about the principle of the devil this evening, because so many of us have been taught to live in fear, to feel that there is an adversary out there who is looking to do us harm, who is looking to make our lives difficult. And because of that, so many people feel hopeless. They feel they have no control over their lives. They feel that they're being punished. And it's just not fair. And for a loving creator who brought us into this world so that we could experience joy and love and peace and creativity, that we could be co-creators in our lives, we know that we have the ability to bring about changes in our lives. And I have been doing that all of my life. And those of you who know me know I have wonderful stories to tell about that whole process that I am still going through. I'm still going through this process. And so this evening, as we're speaking about the devil, maybe for the first time in your life, you're going to think about this principle of the devil in a different kind of way, because it's actually the first stage of your spiritual unfoldment. Once you get yourself out of that bondage thinking, then your life changes in miraculous ways. So, I've been tiptoeing around for almost 2 years and being very delicate in how I dealt with subjects. And now I'm just all in. I'm just going for it. And I'm hoping that those of you who are ready to consider this new way of thinking will really be affected in a very positive way that will assist you in moving forward in your journey. So we are going to do our meditation, our overall body exercise, and I would love to have some feedback from you about how this exercise feels for you. Does it help you in any way? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel empowered? Have you had any particular experiences? It's an integral part of the Rosicrucian work, but science jumped on the bandwagon a number of years ago, beginning with biofeedback when they were treating patients for cancer. And so they started having these patients visualizing the diseased cells in their bodies being destroyed. So they started teaching people how to focus their consciousness on their bodies in order to affect change. And that's what we are doing when we do this exercise. And then when we are sending out light, we know that light travels, and thought is light. It is a form of light. And when we come to that realization, when we begin to really feel it, and that's why I want some feedback from you about whether or not you are feeling it, and then I can figure out what else I can do to assist you in knowing that the work that you do really does make a difference in the world, and that people do feel it, and that people are affected by it. So I'm just going to want to maybe just put this image in your mind before we start our visualization. And let's see. We know that we're talking about this key 15, which is the devil. But earlier this year, we were talking about the lovers, the self-conscious and subconscious mind, right? And so now we're going to be looking at, are our self-conscious and subconscious minds in slavery? And if they are, how can we free them? That is the work that we're going to be doing this evening. And we've been leading up to this for a very long time. And I have done my best to prepare you for this. And I really hope that it sinks in this evening. Because once you realize that you're on your way, that you've made progress, that you're now ready to take a big step, it changes everything. And it eliminates a lot of fear and a lot of hesitation. So I want to thank you so much again for joining me this evening. And so I would ask you to assume the position, feet flat on the floor, hands, palms on your thighs. Excuse me. And I want you to really feel this energy as water. I'm going to start using the term Qi, Q-I, a lot. And I told you that I have been studying Qigong, and I actually have been studying it off and on for years. And many of our Rosicrucian exercises are geared with gathering energy, intensifying energy, channeling energy. And so it's not foreign to me. But now that I've gotten into a more formalized style of the classic Qigong, I'm going to share with you. So those of you that are Rosicrucians, you already understand some of these principles and are already working with them. For those of you who are into martial arts, you may already be working with them. For those of you who are Reiki healers or masseuses or do acupressure and acupuncture, it's not going to be anything new for you. But I want us to really start to feel that this Qi is like being in an ocean and it surrounds you all the time. And you just have to direct that energy. So that's what we're going to begin to do right now. So take a deep breath in, hold it, and then exhale through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Breathe out through your mouth. Take a third deep breath in. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Breathe out through the mouth. Make sure that your shoulders are relaxed, that your legs and your feet are relaxed. Release as much tension as you can before we begin this, because it'll be easier for the energy to flow. So you may keep your eyes open or close your eyes or put them at half-mast so that you're not getting so much light in your eyes. And let us begin by visualizing this pool of warm, white light that has a weight like water. Actually feel it as water. And feel it under the soles of your feet and flowing in between your toes and around your ankles and up around your heels. And feel that light moving up from the ankles to the shins, and feel that weight. And know that that energy is penetrating every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve. And give thanks that it is putting all in divine order. Take another deep breath in. And let that white, warm, healing light move up the calves of the legs. Feel it penetrating your knees, flowing into your inner and outer thighs, surrounding the glutamus maximus upon which you sit, and all the way up to your waist, so that from the tip of your toes, all the way up through your feet and ankles and legs and knees and thighs, all the way up to the waist, is completely surrounded by this warm, white, healing light. And you feel it penetrating every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve. And you give thanks, for all is in divine order. Take another deep breath in and move that light up your spine, from the small of your back all the way up to the back of your head. And that area where the neck is joined with the spine, you have the medulla oblongata that joins those two. So feel that joining and feel it as one continuous flow of energy. And let that energy flow down into the left and right sides of your back, so that every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, nerve, and nerve ganglion are filled with this warm, white, healing light. And all is in divine order. Take a deep breath in and let that energy flow down your left and right upper arms, your shoulders and upper arms, your elbows, your lower arms, your wrists, the back of the hand, the palms of the hands. Feel that light flowing in between your little fingers, ring fingers, middle fingers, index fingers, and thumbs, so that you feel this light is penetrating every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve. And you know that all is in divine order. So give thanks. Take a deep breath in now. And feel that warm, white, healing light surrounding your head. Feel it penetrating into the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Feel it penetrating into your cerebrum and cerebellum. Feel it penetrating into your pineal gland and your pituitary gland, that master gland that takes care of all the involuntary functions of the body while you sleep. And feel that light flowing into the eyes and behind the eyes into the optical nerves. Let that light flow through your nasal passages, opening up any blockages. Feel that light continuing to flow down into the mouth, flowing into your teeth, tongue, gums. Swallow and let it flow down your throat, so that it bathes your larynx and your vocal cords. And feel it flow into your thyroid gland, which is located right at the base of your neck, a bow-tie shaped gland. And know that every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve is filled with this light. All is in divine order, and you give thanks. And see that halo of light around your head. And now move that light down into your chest, so that it flows down through your diaphragm. It flows into your lungs. See your lungs filled with white light. And let the thymus gland, which is located in the center of the lungs, be bathed in this light. Continue and let the pectoral muscles and the breasts be filled with this light, so that every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve is in divine order, and you give thanks. And let that light continue to flow down bathing your stomach and your large and small intestines. Feel it penetrating your spleen, your pancreas, and your liver. And know that every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve is in divine order, and give thanks. Now take a deep breath in and feel that light flowing so that your reproductive system is flooded with this light, and feel that light circling around to the back of your spine where your kidneys are located, and feel that light penetrating your kidneys. And just take a few deep breaths and let that light seep deeper and deeper and deeper into all of your organs. And now we're going to focus on the heart. Feel that warm white healing light surrounding your heart. Feel that light filling your blood that is circulating throughout your body with little white stars of light. Feel your arteries flowing freely. And know that your entire body is now circulating this light so that every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve is in divine order. And see a halo around your heart, just as you have seen in the pictures of the saints and the masters, such as Jesus and Buddha, Krishna. You too have that light. And it is called the pericardium. It is the sac in which the heart rests. So see your heart beating and radiating this light. And now project that light out into the room in which you sit. Project that light from your heart out throughout your entire home, so that every person under your roof, every creature, every being is filled with this light. And send this light out into your neighborhood. And see this light traveling through the oceans and around the 7 continents that make up the planet Earth. And now take a deep breath and visualize the planet Earth floating in a blue void, a deep indigo blue void, and project that light to every living being up on this planet and all of nature. And know that your light makes a difference in this world. And send your love to those who are in need of comfort, who are in need of hope, who are in need of healing, who are in need of having a more positive outlook on their lives. Send that light to our world leaders that they may think more clearly and have an understanding that it is their responsibility to be of service, that the office is not for their egos, but it is that they may be instruments to assist in creating a harmonious environment for all human beings on the planet Earth. And just sense that around you are others like you who are sending this light simultaneously, and see that ring of light surrounding the planet Earth, and know that you are one of those sparks of light doing this work. And now let us tune in with the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God. Let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ consciousness return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men. The purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. So be it. Amen. Take a few deep breaths and begin to bring yourself back into the consciousness of your body and into the room where you sit, and begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes and bring yourself settled once again into your physical being, knowing that the work that you have done has made a difference this day, and we give thanks. I hope that felt good for you. I hope that you realize the power of uniting our light together. It is so wonderful. I thought I was going to have an opportunity to go to my Rosicrucian Lodge today, and I didn't have that opportunity. So you are my Rosicrucian Lodge for the day. So this energy that we are exchanging, let it allow us to fill us up and take us through this next week. That is my prayer. So we have been dealing with this whole idea of the devil. And this evening, we're going to do our best to begin to embrace the idea that unchaining ourselves from this image and this mentality is the first stage of spiritual unfoldment. Paul Foster Case, who serves as our guide through this tarot adventure. We are using the tarot not for divination, not to predict the future, but to use these universal symbols as a way to seed our subconscious mind and to develop a stronger relationship with our subconscious mind, which will then help to link us to that divine mind, so that we are constantly being guided by that God GPS. I like to call it the God GPS. And that we can be inspired and know that at any time we can tap into that energy. That energy is always present, but we have to move from transmission mode into reception mode. And so that is why we do the meditation. So even as we're out and about during our days, we still have the ability to move into receptive mode, even though we are out in the world. You don't have to always be in a sacred space. You don't have to always be somewhere where you can pray. You can pray with your eyes wide open, if that is what works for you. The mystic has to be able to operate anywhere And it is possible for you to go into a state of meditation at any moment with your eyes wide open, because you direct the energy and you tune in with your mind. And so this is why we are doing this work together, so that as we experiment with these divine laws, that we can really see how to apply them every day. Just reading books is not good enough. I say this all the time, but I cannot say it enough, because there are so many who can quote you chapter and verse from books right down to the pages. And I had a very dear friend that I was studying with in B.O.T.A, and she was so good at knowing exactly what page or what lesson things were on. But her devil was getting high. And it was only marijuana, she would say. It's only marijuana, but anything that affects your consciousness blocks your ability to connect in the way that gives you mastery. We have a lot of shamans here in Sarasota. Every other person is a shaman or a medium. And so they're dealing on this psychic level where they're looking to connect with entities or channel entities or work with power animals. Whereas the mystic understands that he is equipped with tools to use that are within them. And so they do not need to go playing around in the psychic realms to get entities to help them. And I'm speaking about this very, very honestly and very, very openly, because it is so important that we not get caught up into that, because I have seen so many people get lost doing drugs so that they can quicken their awakening. That's always their excuse. It never quickens your awakening. And if you look back in history at those who have gotten deep into occult work, and occult means hidden. And many times, people who are looking to learn how to master the laws are looking only for their own personal aggrandizement. They're in it for themselves. They are not trying to unite with the heart of God. They are not trying to be of service to humanity. They are looking only to serve themselves and to have material gain, and that is their main priority. And that's why so much of this information remained hidden. You know, Hitler was a big-time occultist, and he was always collecting things that were supposedly powerful. The word escapes me at the moment because I don't even relate to this. Well, we know about psychometry, right? We know that everything has an aura or an energy around it. And so it's true that there are objects that when they have been in a particular place collect a certain kind of energy. This is true. But for the occultist, having possession of these objects, of these talismans, that's what I was trying to get at. Talisman is the word. The initiate or the mystic does not work with talisman because they're their own talisman. They are seeking to surround themselves with that divine energy that is ever present. And so that they are projecting that energy out into the world, and they are seeking to be an instrument of peace, of love, of harmony, of hope, and of healing. And so that is the difference between an occultist and a mystic. A mystic wants to be of service. A mystic is in love with divinity. And so this is why in alchemy and in so many of the secret teachings, the closest analogy that we can come to is the relationship between the lovers. And so that is why divinity is called the beloved, because that is the closest that we can get to that intensity of totally being absorbed and enamored and inspired and enthralled. And this is also what sometimes becomes our downfall, in that we get so locked up into our sensations that it becomes the chains that bind us and keep us from being free and keep us from advancing. So when we look at key 15, the devil, let me just find it here. It's not pretty to look at, that's for sure. And we see that there are two individuals, a male and a female, who are chained. But when you look at those chains, you can see that they can easily take them off. So that really, this being has no control over them at all. So the devil represents the first stage of spiritual unfoldment. And this is the stage of conscious bondage, when we realize that we are in bondage by our own choice, by our own design. Unfortunately, many times we wait too late, or we don't come to this realization until we are drug addicts, or we're cigarette addicts, or we're sex addicts, or we're power addicts. And then we have to work so much harder in order to lift those chains from around our necks. So this devil personifies the conception that man is bound by material conditions. And this is why we talk so much about creative visualization and how you can use these keys, because they are keys to open doors that will allow you to use mental energy and mental imagery in order to change the conditions in your lives. So many people are in slavery. They're working on jobs that they absolutely, positively hate. And so there is little joy in their lives. And they may have a lot of money, but many don't even have the time to spend it. They have no peace of mind. They have no days off. In the world that we live in now, nobody is free. Nobody is really off for 5 days and have 2 days to not think about work at all. No, we're constantly getting emails and calls and emergencies. And being a journalist for so many years, I lived that life. But for me, that was my choice, because I couldn't control when news was going to break or something was going to happen. And then sometimes my boss would have to actually say, Francesca, you don't have to cover this story because it's your day off. But when you've been working on something and you see it coming to that finish line, you want to complete that project. So I did it with love and joy, and I did not feel that I was in bondage. Same thing when I was working for the CBS Morning News. That was a very, very stringent schedule, but I loved it. So there's a difference when you're unhappy and when you're happy. There's a different kind of energy. But we do have to really work to have our lives in balance. So that's where my mystical work came in. So that even though I was working those long hours, I made sure that I made time for my spiritual life. And doing yoga and going to my Rosicrucian Lodge and making time to be in nature. You know, we have to have this balance. And so we don't want to be in slavery. And this society makes us feel that in order to be considered a success, we have to be a slave. And that just is not true. There are sacrifices. However, yes, you can have opportunities to make a lot of money. But in the end, if you do not have your health, if you do not have peace of mind, if you are not happy, then no matter how much money you have in the bank or how many credit cards you have in your possession, you are not a wealthy person. So this idea that we see here is the false conception that we're bound by material conditions and that we have to be a slave and that's a sport of chance. It's you have no control over your life when actually you do. And when you remove those chains, then you become a co-creator in your life. And that is what we're all after. And I'm always telling you stories about how I've worked with creative visualization throughout the decades, actually, in order to travel the world and to manifest experiences, which is just has nothing to do with money. I am not a wealthy woman in worldly terms, but I have been able to manifest so much joy and intrigue in my life, sometimes with having almost nothing in my hand in terms of money. And I made that decision that I would rather not have things. I would rather have experiences. And so that's what I've been after, and that's what I'm still after. Even though I am retired, so to speak, I just got, offered a job last week to sell advertising for a radio show and for a radio network, and I just did not want to do it. Yes, I would be good at it. I agreed. Yes, I would be good. But I just don't want to do that. It's not going to make me happy. And I didn't even think for a moment about the money. And, of course, it was assumed that the money would make a difference, but it wasn't really that. I think I told you that a few weeks ago when I was in my 7th cycle, which I know I'm not supposed to be starting anything new in my 7th cycle, but I had not manifested that car. I'd been talking about I needed to have a car, and I just hadn't put the energy in it because, truth be told, I really don't want a car. I just want to be able to get around and do the things that I need to do. And yes, Uber and Lyft make money off of me, but sometimes it is nice just to have a car hanging around where you can just pop in and run for 5 minutes and come right back. But I allowed myself to manifest a situation where I could have a car if I would drive for Lyft, and I hated it. I went to bed thinking about money and this car, and I got up thinking about money and this car. It cut into my creativity. I was not peaceful. These people in Florida drive like lunatics, I tell you. I thought New York was bad. No, it's nothing compared to Florida, where the way that, New York is really laid out in a very systematic way. And so is Washington, even though it's circular. There is a system, but Florida, it's just insane. And I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. No thing is worth that. So this is where we have to let the rubber meet the road and say, am I really happy in my life? Yes, there are those. I understand that you have children and mortgages and you got to send kids to college and your wife wants this or your husband wants to do this or that. But in the end, you have to work together as a team. And really, if you don't have your health and your happiness, in the end, you have nothing. You are not wealthy. Because a $100 bill will never bring you a glass of water. There needs to be a human being that can do that for you. So this is where you really begin to look at getting your freedom and getting out of slavery. And the other very important point about this is that we have been taught by what Paul Foster Case calls the race mind. We come into this world thinking that this is the way that it should be, that we don't have a choice. And so we're taught that there is this adversary out there who is always trying to trick us and make trouble for us and make us fail, and so we have to fight the devil. But actually, we're our worst devils. And what we think is adversarial forces really are forces that will assist us in what we need to do once we recognize our own power that is our birthright. Paul Foster Case says that in truth, the forces which appear to be our adversaries are always ready to serve us. Now, what a difference your life will be if you actually grasp that concept and say, I could really live with that. I could really deal with that. So when we think about the lovers, and let me just show you here, I printed out, and yes, I was late because I wanted to print out a page with the lovers and the devil together, because I wanted you to see this pattern. Now, let's see. Okay, so that works pretty well, right? Okay, so when we were talking about the lovers, which was key 6, we were talking about the marriage of the self-conscious and subconscious mind. The self-conscious mind looks to the subconscious mind, which looks to the divine mind. So we see that trinity. And we talked about Adam and Eve and the fact that this mythology of the fall of man falling from grace, is simply moving from that spiritual realm or that psychic realm and coming into life on earth. We've been talking about Bridget and our beloved Michelle, who was born, I think, about 10 days ago. And the fact that we know that until you take your first breath, you do not become a living soul. So we know that there are children who are born, they call them, I forget the term now, but they're born dead. There's just the physical body, but it is not animated. It is with our first breath that we become a living soul. And it says in the Bible that God blew into the nostrils of man and man became a living soul. That's the ontology, right? The origins. And so this whole concept of moving from the perfect world where man did not have to work for anything. There was no sweat on his brow. There was all of the trees from which they could eat except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we talked about that, right? When we were talking about the lovers and the fact that this tree represents our 5 senses. And so it is often our 5 senses that make us enslaved. And so this is why we have to be aware of what is it that keeps us in slavery. And I want you to see that the only difference between these two, you have the same structure of 3, right? So with this, we have the self-conscious mind, subconscious mind, right? And then we have that connection with the divine mind. When we're in slavery and you look at this image, it's very, very interesting to note that they're both free here, right? Their hands are open and they are free to do whatever they wish. These two also have their hands free. Their hands are not bound, but they have the chains around their necks, which all they have to do is lift them off. They have the horns. What are the horns about? It has to do with the animal nature. So we talked a little bit last week about this image of the devil and how Eliphas Levi was the individual who basically popularized this image of the devil as we know it today. And we see that it has bat wings. We know that the bat is a creature of the night. We see this goat head, right? And we know that a goat will eat anything, right? So this is all about the animal nature. And you see here that there is a pentagram that is reversed. Now, what we are looking for is mastery. And I think I'm sure that I had this discussion with you before, that the pentagram represents mastery over the five senses. It also has to do with the four elements, fire, water, earth, and air, being under the dominion of spirit. But when it's reversed, then it's the senses that control everything. The spirit does not control anything. So this is what this image represents. And if you'll look here at the center, that is the astrological symbol for Mercury. And we're not going to talk about Mercury tonight, but I will simply say that Mercury has to do with mental energy. When we say that someone has a mercurial mind, it means that they have a very quick mind, right? So what we're looking at is that the lovers, and I'm going to fold this in two, I think is the best way to do this. When we're talking about mastery, we're talking about having a level of enlightenment. And when we look at the image of the lovers, we see the sun is the center, right? But when we look at the devil, all we see is darkness. And that darkness represents ignorance. It represents a lack of being able to see clearly. So we cannot have mastery when we are in ignorance, when we are really not thinking for ourselves. And these animals of the darkness that I spoke of, especially these bat wings, you know, when in every scary movie we ever saw as kids, you know, there were always bats around there somewhere. Or when we look at Dracula, right? And he puts up that black cape, you know, those are the bat wings. It's that darkness. So when we're talking about slavery, we have to look at the whole idea of being chained to something. Anything that chains you, holds you in bondage, is your devil. But you always have the ability to break free of that bondage. So for the initiate, when you become an initiate in an order like the Rosicrucian order or B.O.T.A. or the traditional Martinist order, you take that on because you want to be free of bondage to the world. You want to be able to think for yourself. You want to be able to make your own decisions. And you do have the right to do this. And when you have an understanding that there is a divine order into everything, then we know that when we tap into that divine order, it becomes a tool for us. So when we're talking about liberation, how do we get liberated from this? Let's just cut to the chase. I was going to wait and do this later on, but maybe we will just cut to it now. Well, let's look at the game of life. And I've talked to you about this before, right? And it says, just as in any game, we want to move from go to home in the game of life. In the Upanishads, which is the Hindu sacred text, we learn that you can't win the game as long as you try to win, because really you have already won. And what that means is that your inner self is always victorious. That still small voice within you, your soul, is absolutely perfect without a spot. So you're already victorious if you are conscious. If you're not conscious, then you have no communication with your inner self. And so that is what the journey is all about. It's getting in tune with the inner self. In our Rosicrucian work, we say, God of our heart, God of our realization. Until you have a certain level of realization of the divinity within you, you cannot turn on your inner light. And so you are in darkness and you are ignorant. But the light is within you. You just have to turn it on. And so how do you turn it on? You turn it on with your breath. You turn it on with visualization. As we do that overall body exercise, that biofeedback, we're creating biofeedback between our self-conscious mind and our subconscious mind, so that when we go to sleep at night, the self-conscious mind shuts down. It is no longer operative, but the subconscious mind is working 24/7. Your heart continues to beat, right? We were talking about the pituitary gland in the center of the head. Everybody talks about the pineal gland and the third eye, but one of the things that I have encouraged you to research is the pituitary gland, because it is the pituitary gland that takes care of the autonomic nervous system while we sleep. When we begin to realize that this self-conscious mind is a very, very small part, it's subconscious mind that connects us with that divine mind. And when we're able to make that connection, then we are liberated. And the game of life is already won. You're just trying to say, now what do I need to do to get from first base to second base? You know, baseball is very interesting. I'm not a big fan of baseball, but I did play softball as a young girl. I'm not saying that I was good, but I remember watching the whole game. You had to watch the pitcher. You had to watch the person that was batting. You had to watch, if somebody was on third base, you had to watch what they were going to do. Were they going to steal home? Could you try to make that run from first base to second base? We're always in this baseball game where we have to pay attention to everything and everyone around us, because we're in the game together. Nobody's in this game by themselves. No one. No one. No matter if they're the leader of a country, the leader of a corporation, the head of a household, the principal of a school, they are all in a game with everybody else. H. Spencer Lewis of the Rosicrucian Order, the Imperator, for the 20th century manifestation of the Rosicrucian Order in America, always used to say that the members are the ones who make up the Rosicrucian order. Because without the members, you have no order. So when you see people that get into power, whether they be presidents of companies or presidents of countries, when they come in with that mentality that they are the most important thing, that they can do whatever they want, that it is a toy, that the country is a toy for them, or the company is a toy for them, they're in trouble because it's a game and we're all in it. So fret not, beloved ones. I always tell you, it's always in divine order. And the more you learn how to look where you are on first base and see what's going on second base, third base, the home plate, the pitchers, the ones that are on those different bases, you get a bigger view of what's going on in the world. So you just can't look from your tiny point of view. That is one of the things that keeps us in bondage. The me, 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 me. One of the things that I really loved about being a member of New York City Lodge in New York City is that as soon as you walked in the door, one of the first questions you got asked is, what do you like to do? And you were immediately given an assignment on some committee to do something, because it is when you're working together, that is how you create harmony. When you have just a few people that are in control of anything, it's not going to work well. And so these are laws that cannot be broken. And I am so grateful for the training that I received in those orders, because now operating as the president of a creative branch here in Sarasota, I'm using those same skills. It's not about me. Being the president is not about me. It's about how can I be of service to the members and help the members to work together on the various committees to create an organization that serves the members so the members can serve the community. That's always the bottom line. So this game of life, fret not. There are laws that are in place, that are immutable. They are immutable. And so if someone at this particular time isn't playing by the rules, don't worry. It's going to come back around, because those laws are unbreakable. So I hope that gives you a little bit of hope. So with this liberation then, we want to, when we can begin to conform our practice to the knowledge that we have, then liberation begins. I'm always talking about the fact that there are people who love to collect esoteric books, and they read books, but they don't practice the techniques. It's useless to just read a book and not practice. You cannot learn how to play baseball by reading a book about baseball. I made the mistake of getting into a relationship with a man who had the most perfect body, and I thought he was a yoga master because he could do all of the most difficult yoga positions that I could not do. And I was so impressed with his ability. And he said he had been doing this for years. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I've been doing that for years too, but I certainly can't twist my body up into those pretzels, and I keep trying, but it's not happening. And as I got to know him better, I realized he knew absolutely nothing about yoga. He knew nothing about the breath. He knew nothing about the journey of yoga and where it's supposed to take you. Yoga means union. And so you're trying to bring about a union between the body and the mind and the spirit. There is a meditative element to yoga that is not being practiced now. So if you go to a gym, or even if you go to yoga classes, even right here in Sarasota, there is no meditative aspect. They just move from one position to the other. No breathing, no feeling how the energy is moving in the body, no sense of developing those psychic senses, because that is also a part of the yoga experience. So if you don't understand the philosophy of what you are doing, if you don't understand what the core purpose is, then you're not really in mastery of that art. And that is what we are after. We're after mastery. So even though I could not do all the pretzel positions that everybody else was doing, I began to have Kundalini experiences because I was totally focused on the inner work. And so my journey was a deep journey, and I was not hampered in the least that I could not twist myself up into all of those different positions. So be careful about judging yourself. If you are doing the inner work, no matter what you're doing, when you are in contact with that inner self, when you're listening to the intuition, know that you will be guided, that you will be given insights. You know, scientists, so many scientists, and I think I mentioned this last week, were able to solve scientific problems through dreams. I know I told you that Sir Isaac Newton was a Rosicrucian, Leonardo da Vinci, Sir Francis Bacon, Rene Descartes, all of these people who were explorers in the inner realm, who made so many great contributions to humanity, were working on that inner plane. They were spending time not only reflecting on the outside world, not only reflecting in the mind, but they went deeper, and they were working with their dreams. And so they would get information through their dreams. They would get inspirations through their dreams, which is why I'm always telling you to write down your dreams. But that's where the liberation comes. So the devil represents sensation, and it's divorced from understanding. An ignorant person is not someone that you want to have a debate with, because you can't win. Because there is not going to be any enlightenment occurring in that conversation, because they're trapped in their own little understanding, and they have their blinders on, so they can't see beyond their blinders. But if you're on the mystical path, you have to remove your blinders and look around and pay attention to what is going on with yourself and those around you. And when you're doing the inner work, now we've been doing this meditation to attune ourselves and really go into reception mode. But if you're not feeling that energy, if it's not doing anything for you, then it's not worth your time, because you should be able to feel some of those effects. That's why I've talked about the importance of journaling and writing down, how your day went and the occurrences that you've had. I don't remember if I told you the story about the black backdrop of this curtain. I changed my curtain. I think I did tell you that story. about how a friend called me up and asked me to go shopping with her last Saturday. And I'm walking through the store and I see this curtain and I say, oh, I love that color. I should get that. I should come back and get that. I just in fleeting, just talking. And she said, oh, I have that curtain in the back of my trunk. And I said, what? She said, yeah, I got it in the back of my trunk. So when we went out to put what we had bought in, there was the curtain right there, the exact curtain that I had been looking at in the store. And so she handed it to me and said, here. There are forces that know what we are thinking about and are looking to help us. There are invisible masters that are, their job is to assist us. And we are all in training to, at some point, graduate into that great work. Because we're on this wheel of karma. We talk about the wheel going round and round, and I've explained to you that even if you don't believe in karma, you know that you go through different levels of experience in one lifetime. You may start off at one point being a cheerleader in high school, and then by the time you get to college, you've become a actor, or you've become a writer, or you've started being an artist, and that's another uniform. And then when you go out into the working world, you put on a uniform. We live so many lifetimes within one lifetime. So this whole idea of reincarnation, if you've never had any past life experiences, if you say you do not believe in past life experiences, just think about how many changes of uniform you've had in this life. And so we are looking to come to an understanding of how we can continue to evolve and grow. And we know that as we get older, we're able to be of better service to younger people because we've had experience. And so it is that there are those who have left us, who have gotten off of that wheel of karma, and who are now in service to humanity. And Rosicrucians call them invisible masters. And you've heard that saying, when the student is ready, the master appears. Some of you may have already had experiences of having dreams of being taught by someone. I know I had that experience long before I became a Rosicrucian. And I've had those kinds of conversations with people who's like, I don't understand, but I had this dream that, somebody was telling me stuff on a board. And I'm like, well, what was on the board? Well, I don't know. Well, you got to remember. So when you wake up from that dream, I tell you, keep a journal or a piece of paper and pen by your bed. And if you can only remember a color and one object in a room, write it down. And the more you do that, the more you train your self-conscious mind to connect with your subconscious mind. And that is how you begin to be able to have that conversation that will bring you information. Okay? So let me read you something that Paul Foster Case says about this whole idea of liberation. The devil is sensation, divorced by ignorance from understanding, yet he is also what brings renewal, because we can make no real effort to be free until we feel our limitations, until they irk us. We can make no effort to strike off our chains. So many times when we think horrible things are happening to us, they're actually just pushing us closer to a different level of unfoldment, a higher level of spiritual unfoldment. So many times those activities that seem to be adversarial are actually helping us move to another level. I remember I thought working at the CBS Morning News was my ideal job. I wanted to be there for the rest of my life. And when I was ready to sign a new contract where I would start to be making money, they did not renew my contract. And this is how, when Lawrence Tish, a real estate developer, bought CBS News, he chopped it into 1 million people, and so many people lost their jobs. And I watched for 3 years that happening. And I just said, well, whenever it happens, it happens. I'm not going to be driving myself crazy about it. But a lot of people did. And so I remember I went to do a remote with our weatherman at the time. His name was Steve Baskerville, and we were going to a camp. I believe it was up in Maine. And wasn't that far. It wasn't as far as Maine. Don't remember exactly where it was, but we were driving in a car. I think we went to the airport, and then we had to drive from the airport to get to this inn that we were staying in a year. And I remember him saying, well, what do you think? Do you think you're going to be laid off? Your contract is coming up for renewal. And I was like, I don't care. It really doesn't matter, because whatever I'm supposed to be doing, I will do it. And when the day came, and they called me and another young lady into the office, and she was I think her father was a police chief or something in some town in Florida or something. And she was pretty well off and, known and had connections. And they had us both come into the office. And then they had one of the older producers come in, I guess, to comfort us. And of course, she was crying and upset. And then they looked at me and they said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I'm fine. It's just time for me to do something else." Just that simple. And a month later, I was, I guess, discovered by a Japanese producer who started teaching me, or giving me the opportunity to learn how to write movie treatments, working on plays and scripts. And I had 7 years of this creative experience that would never have happened if I had not been let go by CBS. I didn't get the big contract, no, but I'm telling you, those 7 years were glorious, and I learned so much, and it was just pure creativity. So not only was I working with that independent producer, I was also freelancing for the New York Daily News, writing about health and fitness, and also Essence magazine. So I was very, very busy. It was a very, very creative time. And at some point, I started thinking, after I had finished that 7 years, that maybe I should go back to CBS. And my friends there were miserable. They was like, "You don't want to be here. We still don't know whether or not we're going to have a job from one day to the other. And all I do is work. And I have no time for myself." And I said, okay, don't need that slavery. So I'm telling you these stories so that you can understand that what may seem adversarial at a particular time is really your ticket to freedom. It is the way that you can begin to be free, to live a higher expression of your life, to discover new aspects of yourself. And so what seems adversarial could be an opportunity for renewal. And then we can move forward to what we know will really, really help us in our development. So many of us have so much talent, and we doubt it, or we say that we don't have time for it. We're told that you can't be an artist, or you can't be a musician, or you can't be a writer because you're going to starve to death. I was watching Tennessee Williams' play. It was made into a movie, and Katharine Hepburn was in that movie. And Long Day's Journey into Night. And one of the characters was an actor. And so he had not been a success because he had become an alcoholic. And so that was his devil. He got so close to what he wanted to do, but when it gets scary, we oftentimes look for those crutches to help us through, when really we just have to be aware of the fact that the universe is always looking for a way to assist us in that journey. And that is what I always call having cosmic confidence, to know that you are divinely guided at every moment as long as you are paying attention. When you're not paying attention, then you are living in ignorance, and that does not help you in the least. Paul Foster Case says, "In truth, the forces which appear to be our adversaries are always ready to serve us. The one condition is that we understand our essential freedom and take account of the hidden side of existence." So that hidden side of existence has to do with that law of attraction. And this is why the way that we think has such an effect on our lives, either positively or adversely. When we see here at the center, at the navel, when we're born, we're connected at the navel, right? And then that navel cord is cut and we come into the world. You see the sign of Mercury here at the navel, and the Mercury represents the mind. It's that mercurial energy, it's that mental energy. So your thinking is what guides you. It's how you're able to renew yourself. And so until you change your thinking, you cannot really progress. That is the key. So just looking at this whole idea of the fact that you have no adversary should give you such a freedom to say, wow, I can really explore. There's no bad guy out there for me. It should make you feel a little bit bolder about what you want to do. And I will tell you that when I left CBS, a friend of mine had left CBS before that, and she was working with a company that made films for colleges and universities, promotional films. And they were going out on a long shoot, and she asked me if I would take care of the New York office. And the New York office was in a 1515 Broadway. A very well-known building in Times Square. Actually, Essence Magazine was in that building, so I knew that building well because I had been writing for them for a while. And I went into that office, and at the end of that office, there was a Japanese woman who worked there, and she would see me coming in every day, and we would say hello. And I knew a little bit of Japanese, but she spoke English very well. But I always like to practice the language whenever I can, to say hello, how are you, or thank you, or whatever. And so I was there for almost a month. And 2 days before I was getting ready to leave, she said to me, "I've been observing you. You dress very well. You speak very well. Do you write by any chance?" And I started laughing. I said, "Yes, I do." And she said, "I've just gotten a script back from Viacom. The rights have reverted back to me, and I want to do some work on that script. Could you read that script for me and give me a critique on that script?" I said, "Absolutely." So I did. She liked the critique that I gave, and she said, "Would you work with me on that script?" And that turned out to be a 7-year relationship. And we have stayed in contact with one another. I have seen her from time to time. She's now moved to Florida. I can't find her, but she's well into her 80s now. But that was that hidden force. Little did I know that by taking that job, simply basically working as an assistant, a receptionist, was going to lead me into something that I loved. So those hidden forces are always there to work with us, but we have to be open. And many times it may seem like you have to take a step back and do something temporarily while you're like getting your bearings. And that being in that office with everybody gone and just me, it was wonderful because it was quiet. It gave me time to think about what I wanted to do. My birthday had been at the end of July, so I was in my power cycle, the time where I really had to think about what I wanted to accomplish. But never in my wildest dreams did I think about writing movie treatments and working on play scripts and television adaptations and that kind of stuff. Never in a million years. So there are plans that are out there for us which require us to be bold and to be awake and to make sure that there is a light that is always on. I always talk about Lauderhan, who wrote a book called Thursday Night Tarot and who had a study group. And I just wanted to share with you a few of the things that he had to say about the devil. Because when we look at this image of the devil, it is not pleasing to look at. It's dark and, it just does not please us at all. And many times we don't want to look in the dark. We don't want to look at the dark part of ourselves. Jung used to call it the shadow self. All of us have that shadow self, which is really our adversary. It's the part of us that we don't want to look at. We know that the light needs to be shined on that imperfection or that weakness and that we need to work on it, but we're just not quite ready to do it. This is where the rubber hits the road, and we can free ourselves from that bondage by looking very deeply into those areas where we don't want to look. So Lauderhan talks about the ego as being the real devil. And he says, from an occult point of view, in psychology and alchemy, Carl Jung describes the devil as the unregenerate intellect, which is another way of saying basically the same thing, that the ego is the real devil. Key 15 is the renewing intelligence. People need renewing when they can look at the universe and say, gee, look at them stars up there. Real pretty. I think I'll have another beer. That just cracks me up. The idea of the universe doesn't appeal to them. The fact that it has some history, that it's an order. Yeah, well, if it hasn't fallen down yet, I guess it'll be there in the morning. This is the real Archie Bunker approach. Now, I don't know if you remember Archie Bunker, but it was a television series about a guy who lived in Queens, New York, who was quite racist, actually. And he was just steeped in darkness. He just didn't want to look at any other point of view. He only saw the world through where his blinders were located and did not want to become a part of the world. And so this whole idea of the ego being that real devil is thinking that your little small outlook, the way that you see the world, is really the way that the world really, really is. And so we have to work through that and understand that, we really don't know very much at all, truth be told. We really, really don't. And so we have to broaden our view and look broader. So someone asked Lauderhan about the difference between being an egotist and loving yourself, because that's a really tricky part too, because sometimes when we see our imperfections, we begin to develop a self-hate. We have a very low opinion of ourselves, and that does not serve us at all. So we have to keep that balance of understanding that there is an inner self that's absolutely perfect, and that we need to get ourselves in attunement with what Rosicrucians call the master within. And H. Spencer Lewis used to talk about going into the cathedral of the soul. If you've ever been in a cathedral with its high ceilings and the stained glass and the smell of the incense and just the whole ambiance of being in that holy space, it feels holy. You can feel the silence almost in your hands, It's just that real, that palatable. When you go within yourself, it's like going into a grand cathedral. So beautiful, so quiet, so holy. This is where our answers are, and this is where the self-love needs to come from. And so when someone asked Lauderhan the difference between egotism and loving yourself, this is how he replied. He said, self-love is a simple appreciation of yourself as a work of the art of God. I love that. Let me read that again. Self-love is the simple appreciation of yourself as a work of the art of God. Apprehend with wonder your dog, your cat, yourself, and all other people. Egotism has no philosophy and doesn't consider the miraculous qualities inherent in all life. It was St. Paul who said, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." The glyph of Mercury on the devil's navel indicates that he, she, it is an intellectual concept born in the mind. Through the power of imagination, our own intellect produces this phenomenally funny character. So when you begin to look at the devil as a funny character, because it looks funny with the bat wings and the horns and the ears and the goat beard, and then you look at the bird feet. And it really is funny looking. And you remember last week that I posted for you the scene from the Harry Potter movie where they were working with, I think the term is Bogarts, where they had to think about their greatest fear. And then the professor would open up the trunk and their greatest fear would come out, and then they had to imagine it in some funny form. If you go on my Facebook page and look back to last week, I posted that. I promised you that I would post that because I thought it was an excellent example. So we have to begin to see those things that frightened us, those things that we feel are adversarial, those things that really strike fear in our hearts. We have to see them in a funny way. Like when people talk about public speaking, for some people, public speaking is terrifying. And I've heard it said over and over again, just picture everybody naked. They're just like you, so don't be afraid. And in this Harry Potter episode, Ron, the redheaded character Ron, was afraid of spiders. So when they opened up the chest, this huge black spider came out. And using his imagination, he transformed that big, ominous spider into a spider with roller skates on. So the spider was like flailing around all over the place because it couldn't roller skate. It had too many legs. So then Ron could laugh at his fear of spiders. And that's kind of what we have to do. We have to look at those things that terrify us the most and find a way to face them with laughter. And so Lauderhand goes on to say, through the power of imagination, our own intellect produces this phenomenally funny character, meaning the devil. Bondage is an unnecessary and nonsensical part of our mental programming. It is sometimes called race thought. The adversary inspires us to go inside and sift out the truth from the illusion. In the process, our minds become enlightened. Let me read that again. Bondage is an unnecessary and nonsensical part of our mental programming. It is sometimes called race thought. The adversary inspires us to go inside and sift out the truth from illusion. In the process, our minds become enlightened. So when we look at it that way, we can begin to have greater cosmic confidence and to be fearless, because that is required in order for us to advance. We also know that throughout these few centuries, we've been hearing about hell, and people are so terrified of hell. And there was a point in history where the church was actually selling tickets to heaven so that you could buy a ticket to assure that you would not go to hell. And so hell became this fearful place for everyone. And nobody wanted to go to hell, but you could buy a ticket. Well, you cannot buy a ticket to get into heaven, because this whole idea of heaven and hell is where you already are right now. You're already either in heaven or in hell, based on the way that you think. Lauderhand says, it's the way we look at it that makes a heaven or hell. Our attitude determines what we see in psychology. Our attitude determines what we see. In psychology, this is called projection. From within yourself, you project onto the scene of life a certain emotional content, plus or minus, good or bad, whatever. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so is evil. If you tell yourself the devil is in charge, you have projected that on the movie screen of life. You could take a more reasonable view. You could say the reality is, was, and will be the best thing that you can do is to try to find out something about it. Now, I used to recite the Pattern on the Trestle Board for You, written by Paul Foster Case, and it is a series of 11 statements which are connected with the first 11 tarot keys. And the first one says, all the power that ever was or will be is here now. If you begin to live your life with that consciousness, that power is here right now, that there is no waiting for this heaven or this hell, or being in fear and feeling like something is trying to keep you from succeeding, that there's been a curse on your family. And in some countries, that race thought is so strong that people feel that their lives are useful. You know, I answer questions on Quora.com, and I had this woman ask me a question. She says, our family astrologer says that according to my chart, I am not going to have any success in life. So what can I do? And I thought that is so horrible, that this young woman has been told that her life is useless, that she cannot succeed. And so when I answered her question, I talked about having cosmic confidence, to know that there is a power that is and will be right now that she can tap into to decide what she would like to do with her life. And that if you're going to look at astrology, look at it as a blueprint in terms of what you came into the world to do, what talents and abilities that you brought with you. And then you work with those talents and abilities. So in the Lover's card, we see that there are 12 on this tree, the tree of life. There are 12 branches, and each one of these branches represents the zodiac. And you know my story. We all come from the same cookie batch, but we're all cut in a different way. We're all a different expression of divinity. Some of us are born writers. I was born to be a writer. I had no choice. I was writing by the time I was 8. My first novel was Wuthering Heights. You know, what 9-year-old is reading Wuthering Heights? But that was how I came into this world, and thank God I was given prophetic dreams that allowed me to glimpse in and to see that I had a course that had been charted for me if I wished to follow that. Living in the segregated South, going to a segregated school, I was not good enough. I couldn't walk into the front door of a restaurant. If I went to the movies, I had to sit in the balcony. I could not sit on the first level because of the color of my skin. And I was defiant that that was not going to define me. So we have to do the exact same thing. You cannot allow yourself to be limited by anybody's idea of what they think you should be. So it is your attitude that determines what you will do in life. This is why I have been telling you that, yes, there are tarot readers out there who have psychic gifts, no doubt. They can pick up things from your aura. They can access. We all have these psychic senses, and one of the things that initiates do is work on developing those psychic senses that are the equivalent of the 5 physical senses of sight, of smell, of taste, of hearing, of touch. So there are those who have those capabilities. I had a little taste of them early in my life, but I have worked through my studies and my mystical work to develop them more. But we all have that. And that is our birthright. And that is our secret, that we have these powers that we can develop, but they require that we be disciplined, and that we realize that no one can limit us but ourselves, that we have to take off these chains and understand that it's about what we decide we want to do. I want to just put this in your head, and we talked a little bit about it last week. Each one of the keys has a Hebrew letter assigned to it. And the letter for this card is Ayin, Ayin, and it means I. And if you look at where the inverted pentagram is, you know that, the sheriffs in the Wild Wild West who had authority, they would wear a badge, five-pointed star, right? When you see a detective or a cop badge, I used to be a police reporter. So when they flipped that badge, you saw that five-pointed star, right? It means mastery. It means authority. But when it is reversed in this way, this symbolizes the fact that there is no mastery, that your thinking is not in divine order. So you see there, and it's right there at the point of where the third eye should be, that inner sight, means that you're not seeing clearly. And so the symbol of the eye representing the all-seeing eye, I've talked about it being on the back of the dollar bill. Why is it there? This country was created on that premise that divine power, all the power that ever was or will be, is here now and is working actively, seeing and helping us to see. We have to learn how to see with a divine eye. And I love that symbolism of the eye. We know that in Egypt, the eye was very important, and you had the eye of Ra, that all-seeing eye. We have the eye on the back of the dollar bill. If you're a Mason, you know that you've got that eye. And I wear my ring with that all-seeing eye because I'm always asking, help me see correctly. When I point at something, I'm saying, now, how can I see that with a divine eye? How can my vision be clear so that I don't have on my tiny little personal blinders on? So this eye that we are seeing in this image is telling us that as long as you are not seeing with a divine eye, you're ignorant, you're in darkness. And so we need to develop that inner sight. And how do we do that? We do that through prayer and meditation. We pray to see. We meditate to see. Not everybody is attuned to the idea of praying. There are two kinds of prayer. There is a prayer of petition, asking for something. And most people just pray when they want something, right? Oh, God, help me through this. I promise if you help me through this, I'll never ask you again, blah, 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 blah. But then there's a prayer of gratitude. And when you begin to have an attitude of gratitude at every moment, for everything, for every person, for every situation, then you begin to experience that divine presence. It's everywhere. So that's what Lauderham was saying about the guy is saying, yeah, well, the stars haven't fallen out of the sky yet. Give me another bottle of beer. That was his thinking. But this attitude of gratitude is what will allow us to move to that next level of spiritual unfoldment. And so that is why that Hebrew letter of the I represents this key. That's pretty powerful, right? Lauderhand goes on to say that from within yourself, you project onto the scene of life a certain emotional content, plus or minus, good or bad, whatever. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so is evil. If you tell yourself the devil is in charge, you have projected that on the eye movie screen of life. You could take a more reasonable view. You could say that reality is, was, and will be. And the best thing that you can do is try to find out something about it. Look at the path of Ayin, the eye, connecting beauty and splendor on the tree of life. Now, if you're new to the show, you have missed our series of the tree of life. But the tree of life is a glyph. This is the basis of Kabbalah, and it is a glyph of 10 spheres that represent the process of creation. You know that I've been working with this, and we have done the Kabbalah of blueberry muffins, where I stripped this tree of all the colors, all the numbers, all the symbols, and then tested it out. And so why don't we just review that very, very quickly here. Process of creation begins with an idea, and you go through this every day. You are a co-creator. You are endowed with this ability to bring into creation the conditions of your life, the material things that you need and you desire. Everything begins with the idea of number. We have reviewed the numbers. That 1 represents the law of unity. Everything comes from a single source. 2, that everything exists in duality, positive, negative, male, female, inner, outer, light, dark. Number 3 represents multiplicity. We all know that we first started off as a single cell, and that cell divided, and it's the process of creation. So that when we look at phase 1 of creation, everything starts from a single source or a single idea, right? Then you have the resources that are necessary to bring something into creation, and then that creation has a form, right? So you begin as an idea of life. Your father and mother were the resources that were needed, that needed to unite to bring you into a human form, right? So we see that, and we've talked about that process of phase 1, idea, resources, and form. Then we move to the next level, and here's our blank tree of life, right? And I've taught you how to chart whatever you need to create using this blank tree and following this process. For phase 2, you have your idea of what you want to accomplish. You know the resources that you need. You know the form it's going to take. Then you need to begin to idealize or visualize. This is where you create your heaven, the ideal situation of what you want, what it looks like. And then you move on to take action. You get that action going, and then you stop and reflect of what you've done. Are you going in the right direction? Are you charting your course correctly? So you have to reflect back to that original divine idea. You reflect back on that divine idea. In phase 1, you have the idea. Phase 2, you reflect back after you've visualized it. You've taken some action, reflect on those actions and see if you're going in the right direction. So many times we start to do something and we don't take the time to reflect on what we're doing. So we're just going out helter-skelter with no plan. People, we must take it carefully and look at what is going on around us at all times, because there are always doors that are opening. And then in this last process, we look to, after we've reflected on it, then we've looked at how can we beautify it. You know, it's been said that 7 is the number of heaven. And what is the number 7? The number 7 is 3, which is the process, the beginning process of creation. It's that phase 1, right? That's phase 1, that's 3. And 4 is we have the 4 elements, the 4 direction. It represents order. So you have to get that order in. You beautify that order. What's going to make it perfect? And then you refine your plan. That's your next step, is to refine that plan. And then you release it to the cosmic. And then you have your manifestation, right? I just wanted to run that through. And you have, I've given you this blank tree of life. I've given you the numbers. Maybe I will repost it for you because some of you are asking me about the blank tree of life. So I will do that for you again. So let's just look very quickly at, if you look at the path of IN, and we have not talked about this, but at some point this will be our studies where we will look at the paths that each one of the tarot keys are. Now, on the tree of life, this middle of the tree, it's known as Tippereth. It's the number 6, and it represents Christ consciousness. And if you look, that is where the key 15 is. That's where the devil is. The devil is in the details. Have you heard that? I say God is in the details. But when you're looking at that Christ consciousness and you're looking at that refining process, this is what I mean by looking with that divine eye. IN. It's telling you that when you've done your reflection, that reflection must be from that original source. It's got to be in harmony with that. And then when you move to make that refinement, you've got to do it with a divine eye. So that's what Lauderhan is making reference to in that sentence that says, look at the path of IN, the eye connecting beauty and splendor on the tree of life. So the Christ consciousness is known as beauty, and then the next one is splendor. We know that there is something mysterious and wonderful here. This eye is like yang, the masculine principle in Chinese philosophy. It is the emperor's power to envision. You remember I was talking about the 4 elements, and the number 4 means order. And in the tarot, it is the emperor that represents order. And the name emperor means he who puts in order. And the Hebrew letter associated with that is the Hebrew letter He. And if you look at the structure, see that little window there? The ability to see, to survey, to organize. You can't put anything together unless you can organize something, right? So that is what we have to do. And I'm just doing a quick time check because I'm pretty sure my time is going to be up in a second. And it is. And so the emperor's power, it's the emperor's power to envision. That's what it means to have that divine eye. When vision is used negatively, it's a snare, it's a delusion. When you don't see clearly, you are deluded. When used creatively, the eye is the very means of producing the splendor that is rooted in the vision of beauty. We don't know enough to make judgments about life, but we all have the equipment we need to make an analysis, to learn, to understand, and to become wise. Then the phantasms that exist in our heads will disappear, and the clarity of our creative essence will shine through. That's what the tarot promises anyway. So now I hope you have a clearer understanding of this whole idea about seeing with the divine eye and the ability to see clearly. And I hope that within this next week, you can really be testing yourself as to whether or not you are looking at every situation that you're in with a divine eye. Look for the positive. Look for the window that's open. Many times we walk into a room and we think there's no way out, we can't see, there's no light. Look for the window. That's the power of that Hebrew letter Hey. When you can see clearly, you have to open that window. And for those of you who know the divine name Yod Hey Vav Hey, it's about divine vision and seeing with that divine eye. I love this ring. I absolutely love this ring. It is my constant reminder that I need to be seeing with a divine eye. So please have a wonderful week and think about all of the wonderful things that you can see with the divine eye. It is your birthright. It is your tool. And take some time to go into the cathedral of the soul and sit down and get quiet and just rest in the beauty of your own soul. And I will post for you a very brief meditation that was recorded by H. Spencer Lewis before he died. I think this was recorded in the 30s, early 30s. And it's called the Cathedral of the Soul. I've been using it for almost 30 years and I love it. I will post that for you. And it's a very short meditation with some beautiful organ music. So I will do that, and I will also post for you the blank tree of life so that you can begin to think about the process that you're in right now. And I just want you to remember that you are loved, you are appreciated, and all is in divine order. Have a wonderful week. You know I love you. Mwah.